Hello friend, good morning. Hope you're having a great day. Thank you for your energy, your time, for pausing in your day, in your lunch break, in your evening to enjoy this video. And if you enjoy, please feel free to share this video on your social channels, email to friends, because it might help somebody that you care about and will help me to grow the Fit to Thrive community. So speaking of pausing in your day, I want to speak today about a superpower. A superpower that if we use enough and master, this superpower will help us to create better relationships, stronger bonds with people, trust. And who doesn't want a stronger connection, especially in this world that feels so busy, filled with so much distractions? It's clear that we all in need of deeper connections. Build trust with people so we can be vulnerable and enrich the relationships in our lives, because relationship, let's face it, it's one, if not the most important aspect of our lives, of course, right along with our health. So this superpower I'm speaking about today is the superpower of pausing, choosing to pause before response, or worse, reaction. Now, of course, this concept was beautifully described by Viktor Frankl in one of my favorite books, Man's Search for Meaning. If you read a lot of personal growth books, books about success, his name is in many books. And that's because Viktor Frankl, who went through horrific things because he was a prisoner, a victim of the Holocaust, saw his mother, his wife, his brother being killed in the gas chambers. And of course, he was a victim of torture, beatings, humiliation. He didn't know if he was going to survive. But one thing was clear for Viktor Frankl was that he recognized his power of choice, that even in horrific situations like that, he realized that he could choose the meaning. He could choose his interpretation, even in those situations. So there are great philosophy in his book. And one of the philosophies that I really embraced, that in my opinion summarizes so much of our work in personal growth, which is his quote that I think is really more a philosophy than a quote. You know how we can take some quotes and turn them into our values, into our philosophy. And this is for sure one of my philosophies. So because I don't want to butcher his quote, I wrote it down in his words, which says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space, it's our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So let's talk first about the difference in between response and reaction. To make it very simple, when we are in a state of reaction, we are reactive to a situation or to a person. Just know, and we all do this, just know that you are no longer in the present moment. When you are in a state of reaction, you are actually in the in the past or in the future. So even if you are responding with a lot of anxiety and fear, which are related to the future, it's still keeping you in the past. So we can say that if you're in reaction, you are stuck in the past. So who is doing the reaction? It's not you. It's your mind doing the reaction. The reaction is coming from our old programs or conditioning. It's coming from our difficult times or traumas during childhood. And as you've been hearing me saying, trauma doesn't necessarily mean that something terrible needs to happen to you. Trauma is any time that you had a difficult moment in childhood where you were emotionally overwhelmed and there wasn't an adult attuned emotionally to hold the space and to allow you to feel your feelings. Most of them didn't have that. It has nothing to do with being loved or not loved by our parents. So in the situation when we're 2 years old or 5 years old, creates a trauma. And those situations are creating our survival mechanism. So when we are in a state of reaction, we are in a state of protection, protecting the self, and we are in a state of survival or stress responses turn on. In other words, we are not seeing the situation or the person as it is in the present moment. We are seeing the situation and the person from our perception or programs. And no matter how many seminars you take, how many times you go to a Tony Robbins or other, follow other gurus out there, no matter how many books or even coaches you work with, if you don't master this skill of pausing, you won't be able to change, because change will never happen in a state of survival. This is something I'm watching with a lot of people who do therapy every week, or been doing therapy for years, or work with coach like myself or others, and yet they're not progressing as fast, as well as they could, as they have the potential to progress. And that's not happening, not because there's something wrong with anybody or because of laziness or lack of motivation. No, it's because most people are living in a state of survival. They're exhausted, they're overwhelmed, they're doing too much. So it's really hard to actually apply what we learn from the books, from the seminars, from the coaches. We can apply what we learned and actually grow in the space unless we start practicing pausing. And in order to do that, we need to be aware, we need to slow ourselves down, and we need to activate our presence or calmness. Otherwise, we'll keep reacting. And the more we keep reacting, the more we keep reinforcing old behaviors. You make those neural pathways in your brain very strong, and it makes harder and harder to change. So there's no change, no growth, unless you are able to pause and make a choice. So when you pause, when you create that space that he's talking about between the stimulus and the response, and he's already implying that if you pause, you're going to be able to respond and not react. So I just explained to you what reaction means. You're in the past. You're not acting appropriately with the current situation, okay? Very easy to know that. You get very activated. You get very upset. Right there, when you get deeply upset, when your emotions are very intense, I bet money, I can say this with a lot of confidence, you are not in the present moment. Because in the present moment, even though we can feel the disturbance of our feelings, we can get upset, like, not upset, we can get frustrated, we can get even angry, we can get disappointed, we can get disgusted, right? There's a difference in the intensity of the emotions. You will know the difference between, when you do this work long enough, the difference between I am staying with the situation as it is, or I'm acting from my past. If your emotions are intense, if you're very upset, most likely you are on your past. So that's a reaction. Response, you are still feeling a little bit of disturbance in your emotions, but there is this state of steadiness and calmness in the body. You feel centered. You feel like you can have a difficult conversation, even face a conflict conversation, in a state of calmness, steadiness. You feel solid. So your body always tells you if you're in the present or in the past. And of course, that's something I teach my clients how to discern, because if you've been living in a state of reaction for a long time, or simply you've been in survival for a long time, you lose that connection. You don't know anymore where you are. And that's a lot of the work I do with my clients. A lot of embodiment, a lot of like getting to know the body, so our body guides us and tell us if I'm in the present or I am in the past. So when you respond, you are present, dealing with the situation as it is. You are able to see what's closer to the truth. You are able to ask empowering questions like, I'm perceiving this, and what else can be true? Versus in reaction, you're only going to perceive one way based on your past experiences, and you won't consider what else is possible. Because again, in a state of survival, areas of your brain, like your intelligence, your prefrontal cortex, go offline. They shrink. Literally, our intelligence shrinks. And in that place is dangerous, because that's the place we usually say things we don't mean. That's the place usually we can offend somebody. That's the place we won't be able to listen to the person. So when that happens in relationships, often enough, if you repeat those reactions, the bond, trust gets compromised. Or if it's a new relationship, trust will never be established if you constantly state of reaction. I've been in relationship with people that live in that state. And as much as I wanted to trust intellectually, trust was never established because that person was always in a state of reaction. That's why this is such a superpower. It's a skill that we all need to master in order to cultivate rich, intimate, connecting relationships. So now that you know the difference between response and reaction, and you know you need to slow yourself down, how do you do that? Well, that's where breathing exercises can really help. Take you from survival to thriving, or take you from tension, anxiety, to calmness, to steadiness. So, if you be living in survival long enough, your nerve system can be locked in that place, what we call locked in the sympathetic system. So in that state, again, you won't be able to grow. That can actually create tremendous frustration, because you might catch yourself reading all the books, doing all the work, and yet not being able to truly apply what you learn. And that's where growth happens. We can't acquire all the knowledge and not be able to apply in our current situations. That's where the growth happens, when you're able to study, do the practices, do the exercise, and actually deploy those strategies in the moments that you are being pressured, in the moments that you're feeling stressed, in the moments that you feel challenged. That's when you deploy those strategies. If you're not able to deploy those strategies in the difficult times, you're not really applying the knowledge. You're just using personal growth, spirituality to entertain yourself. And that's how I'm watching a lot of people using these great tools of personal growth, spiritual development, simply to entertain themselves by acquiring tons of knowledge, but not making changes in their lives. And I say this with a lot of love and respect. So one advice I can leave you with to wrap it up is, if you're starting to wow, I do this, and we all do it, you can start by doing one thing. Make a commitment to never act or speak from a place of upset. When you're upset, if possible, create that pause. Ask the person, time out. I need some time. I'm very heated. I'm very upset right now, and I don't want to say anything that I'll regret later. I need some time. Ask for what you need. Do not write an email. Do not write a text message. Do not act. Do not make decisions from a place of upset, because the decisions you're making at that moment can have pretty heavy consequences that you might regret. And when you act from that place, you're acting from a place of fear, a place of survival. If you're venting your anger at somebody, nothing good's gonna come out of that. Number one, it's not fair to the person to vent your past anger, because if you're reacting out of anger, you acting from a place of old anger, and you not making sense to that person. Let me give you an example. How many times somebody has reacted either through an email, text message, or in person, and you knew at that moment, you were confused, and you knew at that moment that whatever that person was saying or doing had actually nothing to do with you. I'm sure you went through this at least one time in your life, where you're like, this is not about me. And you're right. When the person is very upset in reaction, it's not about you. Not to say that sometimes we don't do something that is a trigger to that person, but this is the magic word, trigger. If I get triggered, meaning upset, by something that you said to me, that is not about what you said. It's about what you said, what it activated inside me. It activated a wound that caused me to feel intense emotions, So we can start using triggers as lessons. But before we go there, before you get there, simply start practicing. Pause. Slow yourself down and make a choice. You can choose to respond at that moment, or maybe your response at that moment is to ask for some time. But you have tremendous power of choice in that space. That's your growth. That's your freedom. That's a gift that we all have. And if somebody cannot honor your request for space, then it says something about their relationship with the person, which is another conversation. So all I ask, do not act, do not send texts, do not email, do not speak from a place of heat emotions, from a place of anger, frustration, irritation, deep sadness, rage. Don't act, do nothing from that place, and go deal with your emotions. And it might require a help of a friend, a tuned emotion, a friend who can be a witness for you, that can hold the space for you, not to save you, not to do anything for you, but simply hold the space. Or a coach like myself, if you don't have one, and if you want to discuss how my work can help you to master this skill, just send me an email, give me a call, or maybe you have an amazing therapist already that you work these skills with, but it's something that you really want to master, because it will create a happier and healthier life. Because when we have deep, trusting, connected relationships, we are healthier and happier human beings. So that's what I want to share with you today. Pause, slow down, activate that calm in you, and you start living in the present moment and no longer in your past. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. I'll talk to you very soon.